Hi guys, I have had a lot of questions about teaching research online. So I wanted to show you a little bit of what I will be doing with my students, and hopefully this is helpful to you. So I have taught research online before, and currently my classes are already a flex structure anyway. So transitioning to online for my students won't be maybe as dramatic as some of your students may experience. But let me share with you some of the things that I have done, the ways that have worked for me in the past, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. First of all, what I like to do is require my students to put their topic through to me. So the way that I do that online is just by using the discussion board. If you're doing that in Blackboard, of course, you just go in here. I'm requiring all of my students to post their topics. I have a sheet they have to kind of go through. And then they're going to answer those same questions in the discussion board. And that gives me the opportunity as their teacher to give them some feedback. And then the other kids in the class also know, what everybody's doing as a topic. For English 102, what I'm requiring my students to do is to choose a particular problem. And then what they're going to argue is actually what are the solutions to the problem. So what I tell them is leaders spend time dealing with problems. That's why we have them. That's the purpose of leaders or of leadership. So, problems will constantly come our way. A leader's job is not to just talk about problems because we call those complainers. A leader's job is to then consider what are the potential solutions to this problem and which one do I think is the best, and then execute the solution. So that's what I'm asking my students to do, is consider themselves leaders in a particular space, whatever that may be, and then consider a problem. And then they're going to argue the merits of different potential solutions as if they were somebody who had control over that particular situation. Of course, some of my students are doing coronavirus. I have suggested some other topics. We've talked about unemployment. We've also I keep reminding them the issues from 2 months ago have not gone away. The fires in Australia, still an issue. The issues with the Amazon, not going away. Illegal immigration issues, all of these things are still around. We're just not really talking about them right now. But I have my students choose a particular problem they see. And by the way, I also encourage them to consider problems in their career. So what is a particular issue, in the career field that they're looking to go into? And I tell them this just makes them more proficient when, hopefully someday they interview for a job. And so, I tell them, for example, in education, we talk about low high school graduation rates or low college graduation rates or student loan debt or, all of these different issues that we're talking about in education. So, I encourage them if they don't want to go sort of big topic route, career field is a really great place to look at. All right, so I have them post their topics in the discussion board. We kind of go over those. I help sort of shape those. They still keep thinking that they're just going to argue two sides to the issue instead of arguing the solutions to the problem. So I'm still having to kind of shape their thinking as we go along. We've also done a couple of Zoom meetings. And if you guys need Zoom, let me know. We have an institutional license. I can get it to you. But I've offered some Zoom time where they could just jump in, throw their topic out to me. We could have a conversation. I've done that already with quite a few students. Okay, so then I actually teach note card research. So that looks a little bit different online than it does in person. In person, I actually make them make note cards. But I don't have that ability, when I don't see them. So what I ask them to do is instead that they essentially type out note cards. And so they will create, hi, Eddie. And they will create source cards for me where they will have to list out all of their sources and number them. Remember, for this paper, they need 8 to 10 and 3 different types. I tell my students that for the 3 different types, I'm fine if they're 3 different types of electronic sources. Twitter, I think, is a perfectly acceptable source right now. It's first person primary source. So I'm okay with them using that. I'm okay with them using YouTube videos, especially of interviews. I think those are fantastic. Some of my students are using podcast sources. All of these are really good. So the first thing they'll do is turn in their 8 to 10 sources to me, and they have to number those. Then they have to type out fact cards, and basically all I have them do is make one page for each of their sources. So they'll turn in basically an 8-page document where they will outline all the facts they're going to use from each of their sources. I make them do this because it keeps down plagiarism, to be quite honest. And I tell them, once you already have your sources, done in proper MLA formatting, and you already have your facts laid out, and you tell me source 1, and here's all the facts I'm going to use from source 1, making the source citations is very simple. So it just keeps down plagiarism. It sort of disconnects them from the source itself. So we will spend some time doing that. So we'll spend, week 11 doing sources. We'll spend week 12 doing facts. Week 13, we will do outline. I require them to do the standard typed MLA outline. I'm pretty rigid about it. We really want them to know how to write an MLA outline in English 102. So I will gladly send some resources your way for that. But we do require them to do the outline. So make sure that your kids do that. And then I tell them, okay, so you have all your sources planned out. You have all your facts pulled out. You have already decided, and when they do their facts, I make them go ahead and put them in their own words. If they give me a quote, they have to tell me why they're quoting it for me. So they have to understand that there are only certain reasons that they should quote. And so they have to rationalize, using a particular quote. So I tell them, you already have your sources, you already have your facts summarized in your own words. You've already connected those sources and facts together. You have done an outline. Really, the hard work is done at this point. Just make it a paper. I do give them the rubric ahead of time. If you need an electronic copy of that to share with your students, just let me know. And so then we will spend week 14, 15 editing. So the way that I'll do this online, I have played around some with OneDrive folders and giving them opportunities. So basically, I just create OneDrive folders for you guys, maybe some of you who are doing Google Classrooms, just creating, Google Drive folders and putting them in groups and letting them edit inside of there. I don't love that Blackboard doesn't give them a lot of options for editing each other's papers, so that's always a struggle of mine. To keep it very simple, you could just create groups in a discussion board. So I don't have them set up right now, but I can show you. So this is my week 10 discussion board where they're editing each other's explanatory synthesis papers. So you can see they can do that in there. They can post their paper. Then I tell them they need to download their other group mates' papers, make their edits in Word, and then upload it as a new file in the comments section under those students' papers. It's kind of a pain. If you can use, Google Classroom, Google Drive. I've even done where I've just made OneDrive folders and shared those and said, okay, this is your group's OneDrive folder, so that then they can just edit right in there. Whatever you can do, they still need the opportunity to edit. And I'll be very honest, I jump in on those too. And I don't go through and edit their paper, but I do make some comments at the end, like, hey, you need to work on your citations. They're not done correctly. Go back and see the lecture video I posted 2 weeks ago. Or, hey, you have far too many quotes in this paper. Or, I still don't understand what your two sides are, or whatever that is, or your thesis statement needs work. So I tell them it's really down and dirty. I'm not here to, inflate your ego. I'm going to tell you what I see is wrong. because to be honest, online, it takes so much more work to leave comments and to grade papers that I just tell them, listen, I'm going to tell you what I see that needs to be corrected and, um, and move on. And honestly, they just appreciate that they're getting any feedback on their papers. So that's how we will edit papers for the research paper. Is I will put them in groups in the discussion board. I may encourage them to create a Google Drive folder where they can just work together. I will probably give them some options for how they would like to share that paper back and forth because it is long and it's kind of a pain to download all their group mates' papers and then upload them again. So anyway, just, consider what would be the best way, what's most familiar to your students already. Our college students with their Crowder email, they're given a OneDrive account. So OneDrive is, not unfamiliar to them. I know a lot of you, again, use Google Classrooms, and that's perfectly fine too. But you do want to be able to control that. You want to be able to see that they are engaging and editing with each other. I do make that a grade, that they are doing quality editing on each other's papers. So that will be a grade for me online so that they remember to get that stuff done on time. I will make this paper due at the end of week 14 because it does take a long time to grade these online. I don't know how many of you spend time grading papers online. I'll be very honest. I think it is much faster to grade papers by hand than it is to do this online. But just a few other things I want to make sure I point out. The research project assignment is where your students will submit that paper into Blackboard. Remember, we have to keep a copy of that paper. And so this is a way for you to keep a copy of that paper. We have to do that for accreditation purposes, but also for plagiarism issues. So remember that they will need to turn it in two different places. They will need to turn it into turnitin.com, and all of you have an account or can make an account if you need one through Crowder or through your high school if you guys offer it at your high school. But it does need to go through Turnitin. And in here, your students will submit it right here. So that portal is already created. That's a shell that's already done. So this is where that needs to go. You can see I have two because I've rolled this class over, so I need to delete one. But it is also already in your gradebook. It's a column in the gradebook there. But anyway, so it does need to be submitted here, and the rubric is already attached to it. So when you're done, what you'll do is you'll enter those overall scores that you give them from the rubric for each of your students. What we are doing is we're collecting that data and using that departmentally to see how we can better teach the research paper to help our students do a better job. So that is data we will then pull. By the way, it does not have teachers' names on it, so don't worry about that. It's just an overall division thing we're trying to do because this is the major assignment to make sure that we're, doing a good job in serving our students well and seeing where some of those weaknesses are still. So keep that in mind. They need to submit it here in Blackboard. It's on the left-hand side. That's where the portal is. Then when it will show up for you under, and my little guy here is in the way. It'll show up in Grade Center under Needs Grading. You will go in and enter the rubric scores for each of those students. So if you're unfamiliar with Blackboard, that's how that works. Okay, one last thing I wanted to remind you of is if you go to Crowder, don't forget that your students do have the ability to use the Lee Library resources. I know right now this is a struggle because libraries are closed and you're not in school, but all of them are welcome to use the Crowder Lee Library databases. So under parent students, you go to Lee Library. And it's kind of slow. Passwords for home access tells you how they can access our databases. They will need their student ID number. So if they don't know that, you might have to give that to them. If you don't know what their ID numbers are, if you log into your Blackboard class and go to the grade book, it lists their student ID numbers next to their name. So if you need that for some reason, that's where you'll find that. Okay. To access the research databases, you just go down over here and click on research databases. And then this pulls all of the options for them. So when I click on any of these, of course, you can go in and use the database like normal. Just a couple of things about creating their login. The first time they do this, they put in their name, they put in their ID followed by their institution code, which is this over here, so Crowder College CC. And then they won't have a password. So the first time they'll click submit, and then it will ask them to create a password. Okay, and then after that, they just log in like normal. So this is what this will look like for them to log in, but they are welcome to use any of the databases. I know many of your high schools offer these, but we do have a lot of them. So feel free to offer that service to them as well. Okay, so that's kind of the direction that I'm headed with the research paper, teaching it online. Again, I will have them type out their sources and turn that into me as an assignment. Basically what I'm doing each week is I'm posting a lecture video on Monday. We are discussing in the discussion board. So for that week where we're talking about sources, I'll probably just ask them, what are the issues you're having about your sources? Where are you finding sources? What questions do you have about sources? So we'll just kind of discuss in the discussion board. And then by the end of the week, they'll have to turn in their sources to me. And it'll just be a Word document where they number their sources alphabetically and turn those into me. The reason they number them is so that then they can match those to their facts. So then they'll just turn in that 8 to 10 pages where it just has source 1 and all the facts that they plan to use from source 1. And then another page, source 2, and all the facts they plan to use from source 2. So we'll kind of work on that, same sort of thing. Lecture on Monday, discussion during the week. They'll turn that in then at the end of the week. Sort of lather, rinse, repeat. Then we will do the typed outline and then put them in some editing groups for a little while so they have the opportunity to do that. Just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, the Department of Higher Ed has said that dual credit is college credit. So these students are still required to meet all of the same competencies. We have to treat them like college students because they're earning college credit. So just keep that in mind. I know we have some students with tech issues and things like that, but they do have to complete the course just like normal. We cannot do pass, fail, things like that. Pass, fail actually hurts them in the long run because then they really struggle to transfer that credit to anything that is usable besides an elective. So many of them would probably end up having to take English 1 and 2 over again, which is not what we want to do for them. Secondly, if you have any tech questions, any Blackboard questions, things like that, please let me know. I am happy to help you with that. Number 3, I will not be completing the rest of my evaluations at this point in the semester. So those of you that I did not manage to get to, I will just have to pick up with you again in the fall. Lastly, just remember that no, it's not going to be as good as we had hoped. And I know it's hard to teach research online, but we can still do a great job, serve our students well. If you have any questions about any of these things, please let me know. I plan to send out an email with a bunch of attachments. Just here's what I use for my MLA handouts. Here's what I use for outlines, things like that, a copy of the rubric. So if there's anything in particular that you need, any documents that you would like to help you along the way, please let me know. I am recording this video on Loom. So if you have questions about making lecture videos on Loom, I'm happy to help you with any of those you might have as well. All right. I know we can do this. We're going to serve our students well. If you need anything from me, please let me know. Otherwise, have a good one.